I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording processes is posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Wilken.
Present.
Bass. Here. Hannaford. Fritz.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Singleton. Schmidt.
Here.
Hens.
Here.
First item this evening is the consideration of approval of draft minutes of October 16, 2018.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Any in favor? Wilken. Back. Fritz. Miller. Schmidt. Hens. Motion carried.
Next, we have items 2 and 3 for the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Any in favor? Wilken. Back. Fritz. Miller. Schmidt. Hens. Motion carried.
Item 4 is consideration of a resolution approving the 90% plans dated July 27, 2018, including right-of-way plans for Carroll K. Boulevard Vader Hillcrest project.
Yes, this is the project, I believe the federally grant-funded project to extend Carroll K from Bader to Hillcrest that you guys have been working on for a number of years. As you can work your way through the plans, the 90% plans, by approving this tonight, this allows us to move forward with some of the other elements, which would be right-of-way acquisition and final approval, and then an expectation that I've had in discussing with them is once we've kind of set this, is to go out and have probably one more public information session with neighbors and specifically trying to speak with probably those bordering on East Ridge because they're of their concern in the project. And then they'll go out, the contractor and the engineering group work through the state, do the right-of-way acquisition, and then we'll do finalization and put the project out to bid sometime in the spring. So, questions on the project?
Yeah,
As
Chris?
So in the packet, page 21 is what I'm looking at. If you could just review exactly what we're all looking at here. The road is obvious.
Yes.
What we have up behind the residential to...
We have to replace green space due to the offsetting amount that we're going to take out, as you see closer to Hillcrest.
Right.
That wetland delineation green space. Since we're removing that, we need to compensate for that, and so the idea was to put in some greenery and a walking area to place in there, and that would be our offset within the project to make up for what we took out.
And then this little squiggly coming down is the path, I assume?
It's the path to the main bike trail.
Okay.
It's a more consistent way to interconnect to that trail system rather than going all the way down through the lower tiers in the wetlands area, or at least the low-lying areas, and trying to then reconnect on Hillcrest.
I assume Jake is all good with this because I looked
Yes.
at the bazillion pages that are this and all the nice little drawings in here. And
Jake went through it ad nauseum. He had a few questions himself. Some of his were in relation to lighting, just looking at kind of the clustering. If you look through some of the different items where they mark out where the lights are located. Some of that I think is to limit the lighting so it doesn't hamper so many of the residents in the area, since it's not built to light facilities. It's built to light just the roadway and the curvature in the roadway. And so the lighting is limited. Those are some of the things he talked about with Julie Ogden from JEO, who's our engineering our engineer on this project. But other than that, didn't have any specific concerns in regards to it. He did note that we need to continue to look at, and I think this was a request of administration, just to continue to look at our connectivity within the road systems. Noting that Hillcrest is on the 1 and 6 year plan coming up in a few years. I believe it's this section and the further section in towards Highway 15. But just keeping this in mind in regards to all these systems so that we can look at interconnectivity to the trail system. So that was his other thing he had noted.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Yes, Dean.
Basically, all this photo is just start the ball rolling.
It moves us into the next phase of the project, gets us going on right-of-way acquisition. There is a portion of this as it curves up, it catches into the land that's owned currently by the association up there. There'll need to be a negotiation between the state, I believe, usually does that on our behalf, and then the property owners, appraisals and everything else are involved. And I think they have to have the final plans, because they don't want to go out and find out they negotiated for certain land. Then the plans come back and they change it, and then they have to go back and negotiate again.
It'll come down to the point where they'll have to survey that, because there's always been a dispute of where our property starts and where the city property is, so.
Yep. And like I said, I would still like to have some sort of interaction or another little public open house to allow people to come in and take a look at it one more time before it goes up, and just let them know what's going on, let them ask questions, and have an opportunity to do that. So we'll try to facilitate that.
I'm sure they'll want that.
Any other questions or comments from the council? If not, would someone like to introduce the resolution?
I'll introduce it.
The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2018-22. Would anyone like to move that this resolution pass and adopted?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
All in favor, Wolfenbeck, Fritz Miller, Schmidt, Hand, motion carried.
Item number 5, consideration for approval of maintenance agreement number 28, renewal with the Nebraska Department of Transportation. Greg.
Just a renewal of our continual transportation maintenance agreement we have for the highway systems through town. And so there is a slight increase as noted there in your administrative report, and then it lists out the annual increases as well. So we'll have an annual increase. Let's see. The lane miles remains the same, but there was an increase just in the maintenance per lane mile that they gave us. And so the annual increase there, we'll see an additional $6,121.50. For surface maintenance, an increase of $650.10 that we'll be paying the department for snow removal. So we'll continue to balance those out and do that. But they just kind of readjusted the fees for those services. So until we annex areas into town or do something else, those lane miles will remain the same.
Any questions or comments from the council on item number 5? Otherwise, we don't entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
All in favor, Wolfenbeck, Fritz Miller, Schmidt, Hand, motion carried.
Item 6 is consideration of a resolution designating city property items as surplus. Greg?
We had a number of larger items, one of them being a bucket truck from the electric department that some of the pivot point on the bucket itself had pretty much been fried and was not repairable, and so it was fused to be fixed and not move anymore. The functionality of that didn't work for anybody else within our electric utility. We asked around to see if anybody else would have any need for it. Everybody else has more current equipment, so at that point, Larry made the recommendation, wanted to know if we could surplus it and then look for an option to sell it. We've had a number of people contact us, tree companies and things like that may be interested in it, but we'll figure out how to get rid of that. That's what started, so then we put out the call to everybody to see if they had anything else, since we knew we wanted to get moving on the bucket truck, and so this is the list that we have before you. Most of it is pretty much small things other than the mower from public properties, so.
Any questions or comments from the council? Otherwise, would someone like to introduce the resolution of item number 6?
I'll introduce.
The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2018-23. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wolfenbeck, Fritz, Miller, Schmidt, Hill,
Item number 7, discussion of continuance of personnel, finance, and audit committee. Greg?
Yes, we assembled the other day to have a committee meeting of the Personnel, Finance, and Audit Committee. They last met in May of 2017, so I think it was my second week here. And so I kind of made an assumption in getting together and trying to put that committee back together to meet on a couple of items that we had going on to make recommendation to the council. And so I contacted the committee members, put together an agenda, went to Bonnie and said, hey Bonnie, we're trying to get this committee put together, we're gonna have a meeting. And she said, did you put together a formal agenda, announce the meeting, put it out into the public, and let everybody know, and then also approve the minutes from the last time, or draft up, get the minutes taken care of? And I went, what? And so at that point I was like, okay, well, I didn't do any of those things, so we'll cancel the meeting, we'll move on, and we'll reschedule, get all those things taken care of. And in the meantime, I said, hey, by the way, can you pull for me the specific parameters that defined that, so I know in the future what to do in relation to calling that again, so I don't make that mistake. And so Bonnie went back and pulled the ordinance that you guys created in 2014, it's ordinance number 2014-15, that amended the city code and defined the Personnel, Finance, and Audit Committee. A copy of it's in your packet. She brought that to my attention and also noted that within our recodification process that we submitted, I think, an electronic format version that we had online of the code. This specific change to city code had not been put in that electronic form, and it wasn't caught at the time that they recodified that this was not in there. And so we went through the recodification process, it wasn't noticed. You recodified the city codes, so you basically wiped them all out and then used the new recodified version to replace it entirely. Thus, what happened ultimately was this got deleted from city code. So when we noticed that, we kind of went through a number of scenarios and ultimately determined that we needed to contact the mayor, contact Chris as chair of the council. We also contacted a few council members that were really active involved in the discussion of putting this back together. Informed them what happened and tried to get a recommendation on how to proceed forward to have this discussion we're going to have tonight, and then give us some advice on how you want to proceed. And ultimately in those discussions decided go ahead, because it is only an informal, you can bring together an informal group. We brought together the informal group of committee members, which is only 4, and we did meet with them, and in that meeting we discussed what the recommendation would be from the committee. And so last Thursday we met and discussed the committee, what happened, and what their recommendation of what they would like to see. I said we have basically 3 options at this point. 1, leave it as is, and basically the committee goes away. It's not a functioning committee anymore, and so that was the first option. The second option would be to just pass this exact language back into city code. Just as it was before, just put it back in, basically a clerical mistake in not providing and having an electronic version that was recodified. The second one was noting with my issue with our committees, such as other committees that we have for the council, like the rail committee and others. They're not so formal. They're not designed to be, they're an informal body to get recommendations and move recommendations on the full body of the council. And so I said the other thing we could do is make it more like some of our other committees, like the Rail Campus Committee, where it's just put together by resolution, the mayor still selects who's on it, and then we just call them together on an as-needed basis. We don't take a bunch of minutes, we don't publish agendas and do all these formal elements that can kind of slow down the process when you're just trying to get some people together, get some recommendations. I said that would be the other option, make it similar to the rail campus. But we took that to the committee on Thursday, and had the discussion, and they've come up with a recommendation. I can defer to our chair.
You're doing great.
I know, I just sit here and ramble all the time, but, I can defer to the chair of the committee, in regards to kind of how that discussion went with the committee, and then what we can open it up to everybody then to see what you guys wanna do with it.
Yeah, so the long and short of it is, obviously moving to a more informal process. For those who were on the council back in 2014, when this committee came back, we had, we'll call it turmoil within City Hall and what was going on, and we felt the need to formalize the whole process. I would say even to protect the city. When we're discussing personnel matters, we were publishing agendas and whatnot. So, you know, I can tell you with our little informal meeting, we get more done without an agenda that we have to stick to, and we can discuss more matters. And by no means is our committee making decisions. It's actually Greg bouncing things off of us that he's considering or thinks we need to look at and wants opinions before moving forward. Anybody else from the meeting has anything they want to add? Feel free.
Well, I normally am always very concerned about transparency and making sure the public has the greatest access to the work we do. Chris is correct. We're not using this in any way, shape, or form to create policy or to vote or to put together anything formal. And it is one way that council can get better updated on things, get questions answered. And in this case, I support doing the committee this way in an informal manner rather than going to something more formalized where we have to stick to an agenda. Because, you know, issues come up and just to get simple questions answered, this is a very good way of doing that.
Anyone else have any questions or comments on this? It was, I mean, a pretty contentious situation at the time, because it was the council that actually, for those of you who are the newer members, the council had actually eliminated, because what had happened was we would have this committee would meet right before the council meeting, and a lot of times all the council members would attend that the committee meeting, which is why we published it, to make sure that we were covered, because we assumed there would be at least a quorum there if anyone else showed up. And so then the proposal from the administration was, well, if all the council members are going to plan on being there anyway, why have the conversation twice? Because no one's missing out on any information. And so the proposal was to eliminate the committee, and we would just bring these issues to the full council. And then at one point, Councilmember Camprith wanted to bring it back, and so we had, I believe it was on the agenda, 5 meetings in a row, and it was a 4-4 tie that I broke the tie and voted no to reinstate it, because again, didn't feel like it was necessary. Eventually, I think Council President Pike, I believe, brought, was she Council President at the time? Or she was on the council anyway.
Yes, she was.
She brought the proposal basically from her, the same proposal basically. I think it may have been tweaked a little bit, but then eventually got adopted. So that's what we were working off of up until the recodification, and it was missing from there. So that's just kind of the backstory to, I think, is that fair? Did everyone agree with that?
Yeah, the elimination was before I was on council.
Okay. Who was anyone here for the elimination? Okay, okay. So I'm not making this up. There's one, not all of it. So yeah, so that's kind of how we got to where we are now. And so yeah, I have no, Greg brought this to me. I'm like, great, this is fix it. So that's why we had the meeting, so we get these issues brought to the council, so you get them resolved. So do you want to add anything else, Chris?
No, you know, other than it was Sid's
items related to Sid that we originally were getting together. Things you asked about, am I right? So, I mean.
We also had, there was a recommendation from the mayor, an item he wanted us to look at in regards to appointments and,
Right.
and things like that.
So-
So we had a number of things come up that initiated me calling it in the first place.
Right. So, I just wanted to know, Sid's obviously not here to give his opinion, but you had spoken to him.
Yeah, I spoke to Councilman Camper because I just know that this was an item that he was very concerned with at the time it happened at the request of the mayor. And so, the mayor instructed me and I did go speak directly with Sid and let him know what was going on, that it would be on the agenda today, so he didn't just see it in his packet. I don't wanna put words in his mouth in regards to his feelings on how we proceed forward, but, I think from the discussion we had, I don't know, do we wanna have a recommendation to make us go do something, prepare something for next time, or?
Yeah, well, I think the recommendation from the committee was to have a resolution drafted that would reflect basically the committee's role as it had been, but in an informal manner that doesn't require publication, a public notice, those kinds of things. Is that correct? So I guess and you're okay with that? Okay. So I guess all we would want would be is a recommendation to have that resolution drafted and it can be brought to the council at the next meeting or a future meeting when it's ready.
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, is there any further discussion though? No, seeing none, alright, please register your votes, please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilson, Beck, Fritz, Miller, Schmidt, Hill, motion carried.
Next we have item 8, strategy session, let's get down here real quick, let's do item 9, can you do your report?
Yep. All right, city administrator's report, just continue to work on items that are, of importance to the city. We have, just randomly, if you're looking for him and you wonder what happened to him, Nick did move into his new office back in the old Grants office in City Hall. So if you're looking for him and you can't find him, that's where he's at now. So, we've instructed, a number of department heads to go ahead and get started so we don't lag behind in the budget year on items and capital items that they've approved, whether it's equipment and things like that, to get going on those. And Jake is working on a whole number of items that you can see in his engineering report there, that we'll get started on actually over the winter. So we'll be pecking away at some projects and knocking them off in the winter time as well. And then we will hopefully have a decision on the hire for the replacement for Pat Sinyon this week. She is retiring in short order, and so we've been going through that process and had that open and undertaking some interviews, and so hopefully we'll get that wrapped up. Any questions?
Chris?
Question only because my life revolves around DR and making sure things have backups. Under wastewater, it says remove secondary pump and lift station. What exactly are we removing?
Our lift stations, almost all lift stations, you have multiple ones. There's some lift stations located directly on the plant, and there are some lift stations along the return system for the wastewater system to actually lift it up so it can go down the gravity system. Each one has two, usually. Usually have two pumps in there, so if one fails, the other one kicks on. Or if you get blasted with something, they can both run. So they go in and replace those in different lift stations throughout time. And so that's what's going on. It's not a...
It's not a remove, it's a gonna replace.
Yeah, if they're removing it, they're either... Where did I put, what's
It
that
says
one?
remove secondary pump.
We'll put something
Yeah,
back.
it's a maintenance one. It's in regards to the concrete pad. They're updating that and then they'll put it back in. They would not operate them without two, so it's a maintenance one.
Trust but verify.
Yes.
Any other trust but verifying questions? If not, would someone like to make a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, you register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilson, Beck, Fritz, Miller, Schmidt, Hill, motion carried.
Future requests for agenda items? Not seeing any. Upcoming events, we have the Light of Christmas coming up. and other stuff that Jonathan's not here to tell us about.
I think that's it.
Is that it?
I
Okay,
think so.
okay. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
the post, yes.
Yeah, if you're interested in, the chamber group is, what are they calling that? The adoptive post, the light post. So if you're interested in doing that, it's $100,
Mhm.
and then you can, they'll have a picture with you, holding a sign that says if you're doing it for somebody or for an organization or yourself that recognizes it. And they do it to raise money to, I think, for the lights and to keep the posts going,
They haven't been
decorated.
replaced for years and years.
Yeah,
City, could actually adopt a post.
well, I think Greg, did you adopt one?
Do we
Yes.
And I am as well.
And our employees got one
Yep.
together today.
Perfect,
So
perfect,
we just
thank
did
you.
it on a private one, privately. So, but no, I think it's a neat thing. The tricky thing is about those lights, and we actually ran into this once, I think last year, where because all the lights are all the similar, they were the same, then I think a strand of LED lights were purchased to replace on one of the poles, and so they're all the same kind of hue, but you're looking down and you have one that's this bluish color sticking out, and so the whole, they could all kind of fit together like they're part of the same type of decoration, so that, okay, and so I will go back to number 8, strategy session with city attorney to discuss potential acquisition of real estate interest in the city of Seward.
I move that the city council go into closed session with the mayor, city administrator, and the city attorney for the protection of the public interest and to discuss potential acquisition of real estate interest and to provide the city attorney with negotiating guidance for a period not to exceed 30 minutes.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay. Please register your votes. Please sway the vote.
Any in favor, motion back, Chris, Miller, Schmidt, Hess, motion carries.
The council has voted to go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and discuss potential acquisition of real estate interest and to provide the city attorney with negotiation guidance.
Ellen, is your computer up still? Did you shut it off?
I just shut it off, I'm sorry. What?
Can one of you keep your computers up or turn your computer back on? I need you to pull something up. Sweetie.
Can we just get rid of Greg?
Oh, we can.
Finish
We
it?
don't
No, I
need
can
to
finish it.
All
Alright, that sounds good.
Kick 2 people out.
He's ready to go home.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Amanda.
Have a good night.
Chief.
Night.
How long do we do, 30 minutes?
Yeah.